It was supposed to be just another lighthearted late-night segment. The audience filed into the studio with popcorn smiles and cell phones half-raised, hoping to capture a viral moment. But absolutely no one expected what would unfold that night. By the end of it, Meryl Streep, the most decorated actress of our time, would walk off Jimmy Kimmel live with tears in her eyes and a room full of stunned silence behind her. It began, innocently enough. Jimmy Kimmel, ever the jester with his snappy charm, welcomed Meryl onto the stage to a standing ovation. She looked radiant elegant in a simple navy blue dress, eyes twinkling with that same spark that had lit up decades of unforgettable performances. The crowd adored her. Hollywood royalty had graced the studio, and they were ready for laughter, nostalgia, and maybe a few surprise impressions from her past roles. But 5 minutes into the interview, the tone shifted. Jimmy, always one to push boundaries, turned the conversation toward politics. "So, Meryl," he said, smiling a little too broadly, "you've become a bit of an activist lately. You ever worry that you're just another Hollywood liberal telling the rest of us how to think?" The laughter was tentative. A few claps, but Meryl didn't smile. She sat up straighter, the kind of stillness that makes a room go quiet. "I speak when silence feels like betrayal," she replied, her voice calm but weighted. "It's not about left or right, it's about humanity." Jimmy chuckled awkwardly. "Right, but don't you think people are getting tired of actors using their platform for politics?" Meryl blinked, the corner of her mouth twitching. Slightly, the camera zoomed in just enough to catch the hurt flicker in her eyes. And then, softly but firmly, she began to speak not as an actress, but as a mother, a woman, a human being who had seen more than most people ever would. She talked about her childhood. Growing up in New Jersey, where her father worked long hours and her mother fought cancer in silence. She talked about how she learned empathy not from scripts, but from real-life moments. Seeing a friend's brother return from Vietnam, broken and ignored. Comforting a fellow actress backstage after a sexual assault that never made headlines. She spoke of times she'd wanted to quit acting altogether, disgusted by the industry's shallow values, but stayed because she believed in storytelling as a force for truth. "People think I live in a bubble," she said, her voice quivering. "But I've held women as they cried in their dressing rooms. I've helped bury friends who died of AIDS when no one wanted to say the word. I've sat in courtrooms and watched justice fail. And I've stayed silent far too many times, because I was afraid to be just another Hollywood liberal. But if not now, then when?" The room was quiet. Even Jimmy seemed caught off guard, uncertain how to pivot back to jokes and games. But instead of leaning into the discomfort, he tried to joke his way out. "Well, you've got your Oscar speeches for that, don't you?" he said, smirking. "Maybe save the monologue for the next awards show." The audience chuckled, nervously. Meryl looked at him, long and hard. She wasn't angry, but she was done. "You invited me here," she said slowly, "not as a clown, not as a puppet for punchlines, but as a person. If you didn't want the truth, you should have invited someone else." She stood up, not with rage, but with a dignity that filled the room like thunder. The applause started slowly, one person clapping in the back, then another, and then, suddenly, the entire audience was on their feet, erupting into cheers. Jimmy Kimmel didn't know what to do. He stammered something about commercial breaks, tried to shake her hand, but Meryl was already halfway backstage. It was chaos behind the curtains. Producers scrambling, assistants trying to stop her. But Meryl didn't yell, didn't cry until she was alone in the dressing room. Only then did the tears come, quietly, as she stared into the mirror. Not because she'd been insulted, but because she knew how easy it would have been to laugh along, stay quiet, and walk away with her reputation untouched. But silence was no longer an option. The next morning, the headlines exploded. Meryl Streep walks off Kimmel's show after on-air clash. Social media split into some mocking her for being too sensitive, others hailing her as a hero. But something deeper happened, too. Clips of her speech went viral. People who had never listened to her before started paying attention, to her roles, but to her words. Within days, a group of young women launched a grassroots campaign called Voices Unscripted, inspired by Meryl's courage to speak out. It began as a small online forum and grew into a nonprofit within months, offering support and training for women in media, activism, and the arts. Meryl quietly funded their first year without fanfare. As for Jimmy Kimmel, he issued an apology. "Yes, but sincere. I pushed too hard," he admitted on air the following week. "Sometimes we forget that behind every public figure is a human being with a beating heart." But Meryl didn't return to his show. She didn't need to. What she had done that night wasn't a PR move. It wasn't a viral stunt. It was a woman refusing to be boxed in by expectations, reclaiming her voice not as an entertainer, but as a witness to truth. And in doing so, She reminded millions watching across the world of something far more powerful than fame, the strength it takes to speak, even when your voice shakes, and the change that begins when one person dares to rise, even when the spotlight is hostile. Asterisk, the message was clear. Don't wait for permission to be real. Don't wait for applause to speak the truth. Because sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is simply not sit back down. Asterisk,